Good morning, everyone. Andy Crump, Councillor Andy Crump, is evidently stuck on the motorway and will be a few minutes late. So I'm taking over for a few minutes, and he'll be bursting through the door any minute now, but I'll carry on. So, fire evacuation. There are no planned fire alarms scheduled at this time. Therefore, should the alarm go off, please make your way out of the building via the nearest fire exit to the car park beside the Windmill House, public house. Please ensure that microphones directly in front of you is switched on and logged in. Please do not move the microphone from its set position. Right. Have we any apologies?
Yes, good morning, Chair. This morning we have apologies from Councillor Hencher-Serafin, for whom Jenny Fradgley is substituting, Councillor Mike Rice, for whom Tom Ballinger is substituting, and Councillor Victoria Alcock.
Right, so my chair's brief is that I can't find Andy's list of puns. I don't know where he keeps them. I'm just going to introduce the Chief Executive, David Buckland, to go through the main item on the agenda, which is the devolution plans and what we are going to scrutinise this morning.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Just a few things before we start. Obviously, this is a major issue for the Council, probably the biggest issue that we've had to consider since the Council was formed back in 1974 about the future structure of local government within Warwickshire. I don't need to remind you that there'll be a full debate in this chamber on the 17th of November. That's when you'll be expressing your particular views as to which proposal you will be supporting. Today is really an opportunity for us to go through the report that's scheduled for consideration at the Cabinet on Monday in detail, and for you to ask questions around that, more than having a debate around the pros and cons for each of the options. There are three recommendations on page 1 of the report, and I just want to add a fourth proposed recommendation that, in dialogue with the leader of the Council, will be added to these three. So before I get into the detail, I just thought I should bring that to your attention. And the fourth recommendation, it probably won't be number 4, it'll probably be number 2 or 3, is that it's surrounding the form of council that would be formed in the event of a single unitary Warwickshire being approved. And there's a recommendation that's gone through Nuneaton and Bedworth and being considered at Warwick District Council, that the council registers its opposition against the principle of that being a continuing authority rather than a brand newly established authority. So we'll come on to that in a short while, but I just wanted to make sure I've got that covered underneath the recommendations to start with. So, Chair, if I could take councillors through the report, and I'm very happy for us to stop as we go. If you've got any questions as we go through, I think I'd rather deal with that than wait until the end, because sometimes the moment's lost. And start at the very beginning, and that was why we are here, why we're considering this, and it does evolve, all come from the publication just before Christmas last year of the English Devolution White Paper. This was government's proposals about how they want to share power from Whitehall to directly elected mayors in charge of strategic authorities, and these strategic authorities would cover the whole of England. Currently, we have combined authorities which concentrated on the cities. The government want to replicate that model for everywhere in England. What the government also said at that particular time is that they want those strategic authorities, which will receive the power, to be underpinned by unitary government and not two-tier government. So, still within England, we have 21 county council areas which are supported by, and underpinned also by 164 district and borough councils. Those authorities being completely abolished and unitary authorities being put in their place. So the second page of the report talks about a letter I then received on the 5th of February 2025, which was a formal invitation to the Council to prepare a submission which is due to government by the 28th of November for what we think the format of local government should be within Warwickshire. And whilst it's addressed to Stratford-on-Avon District Council, we've got to make sure that the submission that we make, for it to be considered to be viable by government, actually covers the whole of the county of Warwickshire. The 6 main criteria are listed there. You've got as attached to Appendix 1 the full letter, which gives a bit more detail about that. What government also required us to do within 6 weeks was to develop what we termed an interim plan. And the interim plan was to share with government what our initial thinking was in relation to the options for local government reorganisation within Warwickshire. We considered that at the council meeting on the 17th of March. That identified 2 possible options for local government reorganisation within Warwickshire: a single unitary Warwickshire based on the current county council boundary, and then a 2 unitary Warwickshire. Now, there were some questions in the members' briefings that I've done over Monday night and Tuesday night about how the groupings were made up. We were encouraged to use existing district and borough council boundaries as the building blocks for the new unitary authorities. So, the 2 which have been proposed at the moment is a North Warwickshire, which is based on the current borough council boundaries of North Warwickshire, Nuneaton and Rugby. They're all boroughs in the north. And in South Warwickshire, the district council boundaries of Stratford-on-Avon and Warwick. To help councillors determine a way forward, we commissioned Deloitte, and that commission was supported by all 5 of the district and borough councils within Warwickshire. And that was presented to the council meeting in July, when council determined that its preference to be used in consultation was a 2 unitary Warwickshire solution. The document that you considered in July was for councillors, specifically to help you with that options appraisal, and that was written by Deloitte. The latest Deloitte report is actually meant for ministerial officials and the Minister and the Secretary of State to help them make their decisions. So I just wanted to make that difference. So there's 2 different purposes and 2 different audiences for those reports. So Table 1 shows that the analysis that Deloitte's done. That's on page 4. Yeah. And quite confusingly, Deloitte have reversed how they've scored in the final business case and submission. So in the options appraisal, they gave 1 point to the best option and 2 points to the second option, and it was the lowest score that was identified as the best. In the submission document, they've reversed that, so it's 2 points for the best and 1 point for the second. But of course, the 5 criteria that government have suggested, Deloitte scored it that way. One of the key issues that came out in that initial options appraisal was around council tax. And I make no excuse for mentioning that again within the report and repeating it to you now. The proposals that the County Council have put forward for their business case would see council tax harmonising within a single year. And it would harmonise at the highest rate within Warwickshire. The table on table 2 at the top of page 5 identifies that actually Stratford-on-Avon District Council and the taxpayers of Stratford have the lowest of all the council tax rates across Warwickshire at the moment. That would undoubtedly mean an increase for residents within Stratford-on-Avon District. Following the meeting in July, 4 councils actually identified a preference for 2 unitary working, and those 4 are ourselves, Warwick District Council, Nuneaton and Bedworth District Borough Council, and North Warwickshire Borough Council. The 4 of us together have then commissioned further research and engagement, and I'll go through that in a second, what that is. Rugby are undecided on their preference at the moment, and as I understand it, the position at Rugby Borough Council is that they're going to consider the case which is being prepared for the 2 unitary Warwickshire alongside the County Council case which is being considered for the single unitary Warwickshire, for them to make their minds up about which way they want to go as an authority. So the additional research that we're going to just run through includes the engagement exercise, and that engagement exercise was undertaken by a firm called Opinion Research Services, which is a spin-off of the University of Swansea. People 2 have concentrated on the desegregation of county-wide services such as adult social care and children's services. The District Councils Network which is a special interest group of the Local Government Association. When the LGA was formed back in the 90s, prior to that, there used to be an association of district councils, which was a standalone body. Since the LGA was formed, it's now a special interest group within the LGA, as is the County Councils Network. And of course, the white paper that was published last year included reports which have been prepared for the County Council Network by PricewaterhouseCoopers, which talked about the potential savings that could be achieved from unitarisation. And then finally, the submission document itself, the Deloitte report, which is appended as Appendix 11. I will just pause on this point on Appendix 11. Now, Appendix 11 is the text for the submission document itself. We'll be going through graphic design to make sure it looks and feels like a proper submission document, but at this point it's more important to concentrate on the text than the look and the feel of the document. By the time Council meet on the 17th of November, I'll circulate to all councillors what the current version of that document will be. So if I start with the engagement, and I'm now turning to page 6 of the report. The engagement exercise was undertaken on our behalf. It comprised of a questionnaire that was made available through the websites for the 4 councils. Hard copies also made available in all of our public buildings. It ran for the period from the 7th of August to the 14th of September. In addition to the questionnaire, a number of focus groups were undertaken, one for each of the 4 district and borough areas. So there were 4 residents focus groups undertaken. As a direct result of the comments that were made at our council meeting on the 14th of July, there was a specific focus group for potentially vulnerable users of county council services. There were workshops with stakeholders. There were 2 focus groups with town and parish councils, and there was also a focus groups with business. Alongside that, there were also in-depth interviews with key partners. Now, the attached Appendix 5 is a full copy of the Opinion Research Services report. I'm not going to go through that in line by line with you today. Suffice to say, though, we received, as a result of the exercise, 2,334 responses. Some of the main questions that were asked, we've pulled out within the text of the report to judge whether or not there was support initially for the idea of moving to unitarisation, and actually 54% of all respondents said yes, they agree with that. In Stratford, that was higher. 57% of respondents said that they support that as a way forward. That's actually in line with a similar survey that we did back in 2021 when we asked the same question. And at that point, yes, our residents supported the idea of moving to moving to unitarisation. In relation to the specific question around whether or not respondents to the survey agreed with the proposal to create a North and South Warwickshire, 7 in 10 respondents, 73% of those who responded to the questionnaire said yes, they support that view. In Stratford, it's slightly higher at 79% agreeing, with 15% disagreeing with that as a way forward. As well as members of the public responding to the questionnaire, 22 organisations responded, and of course those 22 organisations sometimes represent quite large groups within themselves. The detail of who those 22 are is laid out within the report as well. The report talks about then some of the deliberative, the qualitative feedback that was received within the report itself and through the exercise, and some of the comments that were made in favour of a 2 unitary solution talked about better meeting the needs of the residents of the district, more focus on issues affecting particularly the north and particularly the south, and the point that it would be closer to service provision, the headquarters of the new organisation would be closer to the residents. Some of the comments that came out in favour of a single unitary Warwickshire talked about greater savings and efficiencies, and to be fair, that is the part of the exercise where yes, it's conceded that there would be greater savings and efficiencies from a single unitary Warwickshire, but that's marginal. You'd get greater consistency of service provision across the county. It avoids splitting the county council functions and therefore could be seen to be an easier approach to implement. I was particularly asked by a councillor about how employees responded to the survey, and we know that 184 employees from local authorities across Warwickshire responded. Of those who are employed by district and borough councils, 77% agreed with the idea of a two-unitary proposal, and those employed by the county council, 47% agreed with the two-unitary approach. We've also received, and is attached to Appendix 6 to the report, a letter from Unison which shows a 90% support for the two-unitary solution from their membership. In addition to the wider engagement exercise, we're also required to specifically engage with fire, health and the police. Letters which have been received from each of those parties is attached at Appendix 7 to the report. Whilst the responses from the police and the fire are relatively neutral, the response that we've received from the new chair of the, I'll get this right, the chair of the Coventry and Warwickshire and Herefordshire and Worcestershire joint ICB cluster is that yes, it would be easier for them to continue to work with a single county Warwickshire for adult social care. There's a number of grant schemes that they administer, and one of the issues that was cited is about the liaison with adult care when on discharge from hospitals. That said, the letter did also go on to say that whilst, yes, they would prefer the single solution, if there was a two-unitary Warwickshire put in place, then they would absolutely work positively with that solution. Chair, I was going to pause at the end of the engagement section just to take any questions on that, but paragraphs 1.4.19 really, I think, pull out the main points as a result of the exercise, that 73% of residents across Warwickshire and 78% within Stratford support the two-unitary Warwickshire. If there's any questions.
Oh, before I go on, I omitted asking for any disclosures of interest at the beginning. Has anybody got any disclosures of interest? No. Okay. Thanks.
Chair, I think given that you're all going to be affected by this, we might be looking to the monitoring officers or her replacement to ask for a dispensation.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, all members of this authority, as with all the other authorities in Warwickshire, are directly affected by this decision. So my understanding is that a dispensation is required in those circumstances so that business can continue, because otherwise there will be too many of you who couldn't have a say to make any kind of decision.
Could I ask a question about what I'll just call the ICB letter? Was there any consultation between the ICB and yourself or any of the other district council leads?
Of course, it's very, very newly created. So no, we haven't had a sit-down meeting with the new chair of the ICB covering Coventry and Warwickshire and Herefordshire and Worcestershire. We have met with the chief executive of that group, a guy called Simon Trickett, but no, we haven't met with the member side, if you like, the chair of the board.
So the ICB did come and, if you like, consult with the district councils about that proposal.
We have had a conversation with them, yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's not for the ICB to consult with us, it's for us to consult with the ICB. It's that way around. And at this stage, I'm sorry, I've used the word consult. It isn't consult, it's engagement. And to be clear, that's quite important, because we don't want to confuse that with the formal consultation that the government will be undertaking early in 2026 when they identify the possible options that they want to then formally consult with residents upon. So we did engage. It was difficult because the ICB, as you're probably aware, had been going through this period of flux in any case, so there was limited opportunity to do that.
Councillor Whaley-Hoggins.
Yes, thank you. To carry on from Councillor Johnston's comments regarding this letter from the ICB, at any point have they been consulted on the financial implications for them if we were to go to the two unitary? Is that part of the, has there been any engagement around that fact?
Okay. I've mentioned about the concerns that they've raised within the letter about grants and discharge. Of course, the People 2 piece of work that's been commissioned doesn't see that there will be increased costs for adult social services or children's services moving forward. Indeed, it's been seen as an opportunity for transformation. So, no, there wasn't a conversation about what increased costs there might be for the ICB, but we don't envisage that to be the case in any case. I already sit on the Warwickshire Care Collaborative, and discharge is an area which is being reviewed by the county, the Coventry and the health service at the moment. Of course, moving forward, the current Coventry and Warwickshire ICP deals with the city of Coventry with a population of circa 300,000, and then Warwickshire with a population of 600,000, making a total of 9. It works perfectly well within Coventry, and there's nothing to suggest it couldn't work well within the north and south either.
I ask that because obviously the greatest concern is for our most vulnerable residents, really, who are accessing the types of services that they're covering. So thank you for that, but I wait to see any consultation from that. Also, we've talked about already today, you've already mentioned the number of respondents that you've had to the survey, which happened sort of mid-August to mid-September. Whereabouts in this document and how much emphasis are you actually going to give to the percentage of residents that the respondents represent? Because I can't find that in the report. It may be there, but so you say we had 1,100 respondents in the Stratford-on-Avon area. Well, what percentage of that is it to the number of residents here and so forth? So you look at the percentage of residents responded in Rugby, because we're placing an awful lot of emphasis on the positive nature of the percentage of positive respondents. But the point that I'm making is that if not enough people have responded to this, where is the authority to proceed with that? Thank you.
Chair, through you. It's the decision of you councillors ultimately to make the decision as to whether you want to support the single or the two unitary. What this is a piece of information to help you make your decision. It isn't a referendum, and it was never pretended to be a referendum. Within Warwickshire, there's 376,000 registered electors. This isn't a poll from that perspective. It's an opportunity for those who have an opinion in relation to local government reorganisation to express that opinion. For a population size of 376,000 residents, you need a response of at least 1,800 to get a 99% confidence in the response, and that's with a plus or minus 3% error within that. So yes, the work, the view from ORS, and it came out in the working group that we had held before, was that yes, this can be said to be a true opinion of the residents within the Stratford. It isn't, and it's never pretended to be, though, a poll of residents. I think we're to be congratulated in Stratford for the fantastic response rate within Stratford, and it's testament to the work that Simon, Helena and Bev have done in promoting it within Stratford. We are the only district that maintains a citizens panel, and we have the online View magazine, which I know this issue was featured within there on more than one edition. So I'm very pleased with the responses for the Stratford. Overall and over the given population size, we can place reliance upon it, but genuinely it's a piece of information for you to help make with your decisions later.
Any more questions? No. I'd like to carry on. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Then the next section, then section 1.5 onwards, talks about specifically the points arising from desegregation of county functions such as adult social care, children's services, SEND. And this was addressed in detail, and I should have mentioned this earlier, sorry, was that the feedback that we received as a council to the interim plan was that if we were to consider a two-unitary solution, then we need to think very carefully about how these services could be desegregated, so that we, firstly, and crikey, these are high-risk services, so make sure that people are safe and that the councils are legal as we move forward, but also how they could integrate with the existing functions that we undertake as a district council. So people have undertaken 2 exercises for us. Appendix 8 of the report is a piece of work where they have examined the cost incidences of different sizes of current unitary authorities and county councils. They've analysed costs specifically over 6 key areas, which make up around 70-75% of the costs of the functions at the county. That's shown on table 3 at the top of table 10. The conclusion that people too have come to is that when you become when the larger authorities actually start building in inefficiencies through diseconomies of scale, and the most cost-effective group or size of a council, as per people too, is that population band of between 250 and 350,000 in residents. Now that has led people to assume that should a two unitary Warwickshire be created and it met that cost profile, then cashable savings of around £63 million could be delivered, which sounds fantastic. But to then help us get to that particular point and to ensure that the response is credible from government, people too were also asked to identify how you would get to that particular point. And Appendix 9 is an implementation plan which talks about moving to a bespoke targeted operating model. Now, I'm not an expert in relation to adult social care and children's services, but it is based upon the idea that we would seek to reduce demand for cost for people by early intervention and prevention work, working with our local markets. One of the issues that there is currently within the county council is that when they are contracting for services such as adult social care and children's services, they have to do across the whole of the county of Warwickshire, and they can't specifically reflect the specific differences in need between the north and the south of the county. Again, Chair, I'll pause if there's any questions around people too.
Councillor Keithley.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you very much, David. A couple of questions about the People 2 report. I'm interested to know whether or not People 2, in the report they've done for us, have provided similar analysis for other districts going through the same process. Because some of the conclusions in the People 2 report are quite compelling, actually, in my view. I think I'd like to understand how much weight we can place on People 2 in our business case to government. So there are aspects of how we might manage as two unitaries, and also this issue of their research, which is indicating that there becomes a level of scale of unitary where you start to lose the benefits of economies of scale and actually you tip over the edge and you go the other direction. If People 2 have done work elsewhere in the country, then we should place quite a bit of weight, I think, on some of the benefits that they're highlighting in their report. So perhaps you can help us understand that.
Chair, through you. People 2 currently support unitary councils and county councils, and I understand they've previously supported Berkshire County Council, so they're aware of the local conditions. People 2 were also commissioned by the District Councils Network to do an overall think piece, and that was presented back to a meeting, I think that was probably June time. I'm looking at the leader because she was in the same meeting as myself back then. So yes, they are recognised in the field, they are recognised as experts in the field, and I think you should be able to place a high reliance on their findings and their move to this targeted operating model that they're suggesting within the report.
Sorry then, just following up, it's a comment really, or an observation from me, in which case if we can place great weight on the report that they've presented and the benefits of going to 2, then we should make sure that our business case to government highlights that.
And I think, if I may, Chair, MHCLG identified it as a concern, the desegregation, and I think the conclusions from the People 2 work is that far from being a concern, this is actually quite an exciting opportunity to completely retransform services. And coming back to the comments around the continuing authority and the additional recommendation, it's felt collectively across the 4 that if there isn't a new authority formed in some way, shape or form, whether that's a single or a 2 unitary Warwickshire, then that opportunity might be missed, and it could be seen as the easier option just to bolt services onto the existing functions.
Councillor Whaley-Hoggins.
Wasn't it People 2 that compared us to other authorities that had gone through similar situations? Was it? In which case, can you just remind us of what the councils were that they'd looked at in order to come up with this report, please?
Yeah, and I haven't got that list of councils with me, but we did circulate it to the members of the working group. There was a request to see which councils were benchmarked against in order for People 2 to come up with these conclusions. And there are a mix of county council areas which are rural and some unitary authorities which are rural urban. There is a difficulty because some of the smaller councils are more urban based, but there were some councils within that cohort, including the Northamptonshires, West and North, which are similar characteristics to Stratford. What they did use was nearest neighbours, comparators. Councillors might be familiar that historically there was a group of local authorities called the Audit Commission, nearest neighbours, is akin to that. So if it helps, Chair, I can circulate the same list to all councillors to show who they were compared against.
I'm just surprised that that's not actually within the report, but it's because it's the way that it was benchmarked and the evidence that I think one of them was Torbay, wasn't it? Thank you.
Chair, if that's a view that will come back from the committee, we can certainly circulate that to all councillors.
Yes, thank you. Any more questions? No?
Thank you, Chair. I've lost my place on my papers now. I'm on page 11, and this now refers to the District Council Network research, which has been going on independently from any work from the District Council. As I mentioned earlier, they are a special interest group from the LGA. The LGA is in a difficult position because it can't lobby for the whole of local government here because there's competing voices within local government. So it's pretty much been left to the County Councils Network and the District Councils Network. They've produced a report which is attached in its full Appendix 10. The conclusion that they've come to within that report is that bigger isn't better. Now, it might sound quite provocative, but that wording has been used particularly because it was cited within the original white paper last December that bigger is better, and it was a direct challenge to that particular comment. So what the DCN have done, they've looked at the existing 154 unitary authorities across England and Wales, and they've looked to see whether there's any patterns between the size of the authority and the quality of services provided by that authority, the cost per resident, council tax, and whether any authorities have needed exceptional financial report. One of the key messages within the white paper, of course, was that you've got to have a larger local authority in size because that means that you're better able to withstand financial shocks. Of course, there is a bit of an irony there that the largest local authority in the country, Birmingham City Council, is under a Section 114 report at the moment and is being managed by commissioners. I don't propose in going through all of the findings that the DCN have come up with, but the report does pull out some of the biggest points. I think that there is an issue that, and I've just mentioned that there's only 12 unitary authorities which are larger than 500,000 at the moment. So it is difficult to see any kinds of trends within that cohort because it is so small. Of course, if Warwickshire was formed as a unitary Warwickshire, it would become the third biggest local authority, following Birmingham and, the fourth is Birmingham, Leeds and North Yorkshire are larger in size, but it would become the fourth largest unitary in the country. What the report effectively concludes, though, is that service provision, the quality isn't particularly better in larger authorities compared to smaller authorities. Larger councils have received more support through exceptional financial support from government. Council taxes in that pool of 12 are on average £250 higher per year than the smaller councils. And there doesn't seem to be any kind of correlation as to whether population size is a key driver of that or not. The report on pages 11 and 12 pulls out those main findings, and there is a really very detailed report, which I'm not an expert on, but it's provided for your information at Appendix 10. Again, Chair, if there's any questions on that, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question on the District Council's Network report, because am I right in saying that there's also a County Council network and that they've done a report as well, and the findings of the reports differ? Would that be correct? So if the findings of the District Council network report and the County Council network report differ, the opinions are different, then I'm not sure how much weight we can place necessarily on the DCN report. And just as an observation about the size of unitaries, I think Buckingham's about 850,000, is it not? Is it less than that? Is it? It's under 600, is it? Okay, thanks. There's a question about the DCN and the CCN reports.
Chair, what I've done within the papers for Cabinet's consideration on Monday, and of course for Council, I've put a link into the County Council's papers that were discussed at their meeting on the 10th of October. I didn't have the link available for the County Council Cabinet meeting, which I think is meeting, oh crikey, I think it's Thursday this week. So there are reports within there. They've used a firm called Newton to do a similar type of evaluation. But they are, I think, looking at different metrics, so I don't think they're directly comparable. I haven't looked in detail, Stuart, so I can't comment upon the County Council's report, I'm sorry.
No more questions.
Chair, thank you. So we're getting through it, don't worry, we're nearly there. As I mentioned earlier, the 4 local authorities... oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But before you move on, the comments with regard to the DCN report, it seemed to me strikingly similar to the Deloitte report in its argument and its conclusions. Is that a coincidence, or is it because of the logic is sound and being found and collaborated by 2 different organisations?
They have been produced independently. The DCN piece of work did come along quite late in the process, and I think I circulated to all members as soon as I received that piece of work. The Deloitte report, Deloitte have worked on 7 local authority unitarisations previously, so they can bring with them a lot of experience about what has happened, and reference was made to Buckinghamshire. They were involved in Buckinghamshire, they were involved in Northamptonshire as well. So some local examples about where they have worked. So they've used that in helping to prepare the evidence base on which they then make their conclusions and findings within the report. But yeah, they were produced independently from each other.
Sorry, could you repeat your last sentence?
Sorry, they were produced independently of each other.
In that case, I think we can give weight to the DCN report in the same way as we give weight to the Deloitte report, it seems to me, just to answer Councillor Keithley's comments. And it's a good question, but I think can be answered.
Councillor Whaley-Hoggins.
Yeah, just to follow on from what Councillor Littlewood said, a more explicit question, if I may. Did the People 2 report, or the DCM report, did they have sight of the original Deloitte's report before they were commissioned?
They're public documents, of course, so anybody could have seen those reports. The People 2 report, Deloitte's were briefed on the People 2 report because some of the findings from People 2 have been incorporated into the submission document. As you would imagine, we've been producing evidence to help produce that final business case. The reference to DCN, though, that was done completely independently and actually didn't give time to Deloitte to reflect upon that, but the conclusions are very similar to that have been made in the other reports in any case. Does that answer the question? Sorry.
Yes, public documents are available for these organisations writing reports to see, so thank you.
No, it's all in the public domain, definitely.
Would you like to carry on?
Yeah. Okay. So before we get to the Deloitte's report, the other kind of, not elephant in the room, the other kind of significant issue that needs to be considered by the council is that question that I led with about which strategic authority would be best for Warwickshire. So paragraphs 1.7 onwards talk about, again, the kind of powers that government are seeking to transfer to local authority, to these strategic authorities, and what that might look like. Within the interim plan, 3 potential strategic authority options were identified. The first of which was a membership of the West Midlands Combined Authority, a full membership. We're currently non-constituent members. So the point at that 7.4, the first bullet point was, yes, we become full members, whether that's as a whole or 2 parts into the West Midlands Combined Authority. The second one, a standalone Warwickshire Strategic Authority, is being deemed the Cumbria model. Even though government are looking for strategic authorities in population size of 1.5 million, they kind of contradicted themselves immediately by establishing the Cumbria Strategic Authority, which has got a population of 528,000. Now, Cumbria is bordered by the Irish Sea on probably at least half of its boundary, and therefore there was limited options for where Cumbria may go as far as a strategic authority. The North East, already having nailed their colours to the mast that they wanted a North East, effectively left them with nowhere else to go, and therefore government have established a strategic authority for that single county, previous county council area. They could only do that, though, because Cumbria has organised itself on a 2 unitary basis. And one of the points which is pulled out within the report identifies that if you're going to have a strategic authority, that has to be supported by a number of unitary authorities, and that number is greater than 1. So you need to have at least 2 unitary authorities to have a Warwickshire Strategic Authority as a standalone, and therefore that would mean that that option only exists under a north and south. The third option that was identified within the interim plan was that Warwickshire would join with another county council area to try and get to the mass of 1.5 million in population. And just for information, we know that Worcestershire and Herefordshire have been considering this issue, and actually Worcestershire are supportive of the idea of a Worcestershire, Warwickshire and Herefordshire Strategic Authority, which would have a population of almost exactly 1.5 million in size. And whilst that might be quite appealing to places such as Stratford-on-Avon, which shares boundaries with Wychhaven, Redditch and Bromsgrove, residents in the north of the county wouldn't have much affiliation with that. The counter was also considered that if Stratford or Warwickshire joined a strategic authority, including places like Staffordshire and Leicestershire, again, the south of the county would have very little in common with those particular areas. To help take forward the issue in relation to the West Midlands Combined Authority and to see whether that was a viable option, a letter was written by the leaders of all the district and borough councils and the county council to the Mayor, Richard Parker. Within the response from Richard Parker, he's indicated that it's clear, at least ahead of the May 2020-2028 elections, that he doesn't see the boundaries of the West Midlands Combined Authority increasing, and that he would wish it to concentrate just on the 7 metropolitan areas. Now, under legislation which currently exists, the Mayor would have to be supportive of the idea of joining the Combined Authority. However, under proposed legislation, it is the government that could ultimately decide the makeup of a strategic authority, and even if the Mayor didn't want it, it could be applied to effectively force Warwickshire onto the West Midlands Combined Authority area. The informal view that was expressed to the chief executives when quizzed MHCLG officials was that the minister would be reluctant to use such powers in relation to the WMCA. The population of the WMCA is already. Shall I just pause? Sorry. Hello, Chair. The population of the West Midlands Combined Authority is already 3 million. With the addition of Warwickshire, that would take it to 3.6 million, which is already twice the size of the strategic authorities being considered. What we were asked, well, whilst this has all been kicked off because of devolution, in the same meeting with the ministerial officials, what we were told to do at this particular point, in the absence of a clear favourite about future direction for strategic authorities, we submit make a submission which keeps as many doors open as possible. And of course, the issue about this Warwickshire Strategic Authority as a standalone could not be supported under a single unitary Warwickshire. So section 1.7 is just a commentary, a debate around the options available for strategic authorities. And again, Chair, if there's any questions on that, I don't know if you want to.
Any questions on that? Councillor Johnson.
I've made the point before. I think the issue of the strategic authority is kind of mission critical on this. I don't know whether we can say any more. I just think we should emphasise the issue as much as we can in our submission. If we go into the West Midlands, it's big enough already, quite large as a combined authority compared to, say, Manchester and Merseyside. It's another 600,000 population. It seems to me that the whole decision, if we can't have a sort of hook of Nuneaton or a hook of Stratford attached to Leicestershire or Worcestershire as an alternative, and I think the government, the attention of the government should be drawn to this quite critical issue.
If I can respond to that particular point. Within the interim plan, we did also identify or put a question back to MHCLG as to whether they could take parts of the existing West Midlands Combined Authority out and create a new strategic authority, because I think it's clear that Coventry is at the heart of what is the historic county of Warwickshire, and that a lot of the businesses that operate within Coventry also operate within Worcestershire. I'm thinking of employers like JLR, for instance, with their headquarters in Coventry and their research and development headquarters in Stratford, of course. We were told quite clearly that the government wouldn't be looking at changing existing mayoral combined authorities, and therefore the boundary of the existing WMCA would not change.
Councillor Keithley.
Well, it's along the same lines. I think it's really important that we can highlight the fact that our preferred solution keeps the option open for a single strategic authority in Warwickshire. Someone's got to make a decision as to how this strategic authority is going to work in our area. And ultimately, it's the government's got to decide, I guess. If some of the doors are already closed, the government have got to decide, but we need to make it very, very clear in our submission. I think I agree with Councillor Johnston.
That option exists within the submission. Ultimately, we've been told that if local areas can't resolve the membership of strategic authorities, and the government will impose solutions on local areas as well. So I think it's best to be in charge of our own destiny.
Councillor Whaley-Hoggins.
Aren't there levels of membership of the West Midlands Combined Authority, though? It's, don't we sit on some panels? We go to the meetings, but we don't get the funding. Am I speaking out of turn here? I think okay. we do actually need to emphasise the fact that we do benefit from our association with the West Midlands Combined Authority, because one could perceive that that is a terrible thing with some of the output regarding devolution. The the possibility of being in the West Midlands Combined Authority has in fact been raised as a point for not wanting a single unitary, for example. But I do think that we should be letting people know, for the interest of balance, you know, what our involvement is with the WMCA. And what we've benefited from it, because recollection is that we've actually just benefited very significantly from our association with that, because what I'm asking for here is a balanced report. And I think if we're omitting that from the report, then, and perhaps we haven't, but I think that that should be in here. Thank you.
Chair, to give reassurance to Councillor Wally-Hoggins, paragraph 1.7.5 of the report specifically talks about the council being a non-constituent member of the West Midlands Combined Authority, and we have worked very closely with the Combined Authority. Indeed, they purchased the Gateway site last year to take forward an economic regeneration project within the Stratford-on-Avon district. There are different levels of membership. You're absolutely right. We don't have the mayor cover us particularly, and the residents of Stratford or the residents of Warwickshire didn't have a say in the selection of the mayor in the May 2024 elections. But there are opportunities for the WMCA to act outside of their tight 7 metropolitan areas. The original geography of the West Midlands Combined Authority in its widest form was the 3 LEPs, which covered the Black Country, the Birmingham, Solihull and the GBS, Greater Birmingham and Solihull LEP, and then the Coventry and Warwickshire LEP as well. So we have been non-constituent members since 2016, so best part of a decade that we've been members of that party, that group, not party. But yeah, that is contained within the report.
Councillor Littlewood.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, going back to continue with the points raised by Councillor Johnson and Councillor Keithley. It's a very clear statement, 1.7.17, which says it's clear, therefore, that local government reorganisation option, which keeps most options for the future, for a future strategic authority open for the area, is a 2-unitary local government structure. For Warwickshire, indeed, it is only under this structure that a standalone Warwickshire strategic authority could be delivered. And I think that's clear. But what isn't clear, and but I took the opportunity to reinforce it today, having also talked to you, is that doesn't appear in the Deloitte report, draft report, Appendix 11, page 419, which are the conclusions, which comes to the conclusion that the 2-unitary authority is the best option, but it doesn't actually put that statement in, and I think that's a very powerful statement, because for those who feel that, and I'm at danger of straying into debate here, but for those who feel that a single entity of Warwickshire is important, the strategic mayoral authority would achieve that, but you can't achieve that without the 2-unitary authority being set up first and established. So this is laying the path. This is working forward with an eye on the future, and I think that's what we need to do.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yes. I think it was a comment that was made, and yes, that is not specifically made within that section. Of course, that section really, question 5, criteria 5, relates to the strategic authority. But I'll look into that particular point. Thank you, Chair. Gonna go again. so that additional research, either the empirical research or the engagement exercise, has then helped inform the final business case / submission that has been developed and is appended at Appendix 11 to the report. And at 182, we're absolutely explicit that it isn't all of the district and boroughs within Warwickshire, but it is 4 of the 5 have jointly commissioned this piece of work. And to be fair, I wasn't going to go through each of the 6 criteria in detail. What the report pulls out is a high-level summary of where Deloitte have assessed in their opinion the best result for the 1 versus the 2. And go back to my previous comment, they have reversed the scoring for this particular area. The second point of the right size with standard to achieve efficiencies, it is conceded that a larger strategic authority, unitary authority covering Warwickshire would provide the greatest financial benefits, but they're not great. They're not significantly greater than the two. Chair, I'm loath to go through this particular section in too much detail because it's really concluding on everything that we've built up so far within the report. Moving on from that, the next part of the report does talk about the position from the County Council, and what I can do also for elected members is to forward a link to the Cabinet papers which have now been published. They weren't ready when I published this particular report, so I had to refer back to the special meeting of the County Council that was held on the 14th of October. I will comment, and the report does comment on one of the concerns that the County Council has raised surrounding a two-unitary scenario, and that is about the viability of a North Unitary Warwickshire. And the suggestion is that within 3 years, a North Unitary Warwickshire would run out of resources. I think that comment has been based upon an exercise that was undertaken by a firm called Pixel that looked at the current allocation of resources through the government's annual financial settlement and how much will go to the north and how much will go to the south. That exercise has been based on the last time there was a proper review of the allocation of resources, which was back in 2015, and then assumptions rolled forward from that to now. Of course, what we are going through at the moment is Fair Funding Review 2.0, and we should know in early December what that will mean for local authorities by way of the allocation of resources. What the government haven't done at any point during the consultation on Fair Funding Review 2.0 is publish any exemplifications, any kind of examples of how what they're seeking to do from the settlement, what that will mean for individual areas, and specifically not then within areas. So for Warwickshire particularly, the government haven't produced any exemplifications about what that might look for Warwickshire or a North and South Warwickshire. The report from the county does say explicitly that the north only becomes viable because there's greater demand in the north because of the tax raising powers of the south, and that resources generated from the south would be deployed in meeting demand in the north. I'm not commenting whether that's right or wrong, but that is exactly the position that the county has demonstrated. I think table 6 on page 19 is quite important because you've got, for instance, Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council with a population almost identical to that at Stratford. The ability for Nuneaton and Bedworth to raise revenue is much more limited than it is within Stratford. The tax base is only 40,000 at Band D in Nuneaton, whereas in Stratford it is, of course, 61,000. The average actual property that pays council tax in Nuneaton is a Band B. The average property in Stratford-on-Avon is a Band E for council tax purposes. So that was just a commentary back on that. And then the report goes into, well, what happens next? So following the submission that council are making in November, what's the next stages? We are expecting government to consult upon all viable options early in 2026. The expectation is that that consultation period will run for 6 weeks. The question that previous OSC, that will be online, that will be managed by the government themselves. We expect that to be concluded before the pre-election period for the May 2026 elections, and whilst we don't have elections in Stratford, there are elections being held. I think it's in Rugby and in Nuneaton as well. Government will then analyse the results of that consultation, and then in the summer, and we're expecting that to be June, but probably July 2026, government will announce which of the two options, assuming that both options are on the ticket, they will be taken forward for the proposed local government reorganisation within Warwickshire. The only experience we've had from this recently is the Surrey proposals, and of course we've just been informed that within Surrey, the government have selected a 2 unitary Surrey solution. Surrey County Council never put forward a proposal for a single unitary Surrey because they wanted to preserve Surrey as a strategic authority area in its own right. Actually, the population of Surrey is about 1.4 million and therefore much closer to the government's aspirations in that particular area. In relation to the consultation that was undertaken, there wasn't a clear winner. It was actually 51% of the respondents to the consultation supported the 3 unitary Surrey, but that's far from conclusive, and therefore government have gone with their initial issues. One of the determining factors within Surrey as well was the level of debt that that was a slip, Woking Council have got over £1 billion worth of debt, and government have announced £500 million worth of support towards that debt within Woking to help with the local government reorganisations for Surrey. So post the government decision, there would then be a start of a mediation process and legislation will be drafted. This is where the issue about a continuing authority is important or not, in that if it is selected by government for a single unitary Warwickshire, then one option the government could take is that is then a continuing authority. In the event of a continuing authority, an implementation executive would be formed. That implementation executive would have representation from each the district and boroughs and the county council, but would have a majority at the county council. If it is a new authority which is formed, then a joint committee is formed instead of an implementation executive, and that joint committee would have equal representation from each of the parties. And for Cumbria recently, when Westmoreland and Furness and the other one, Cumberland, was formed, that had 3 county councillors on, and then 3 from each of the existing district and boroughs, so there was a majority of district and boroughs. During that period as well, one of the roles that either the joint committee or the implementation executive would have would be the preparations for the elections, which will be held in the May 2027. They'd also have to start the arrangements for the appointment of the new management team, the monitoring officer, the Section 151 officer, and the head of paid service for the new entity. We're expected at that point also to enter into voluntary Section 24 directions. They can't come into place proper until the shadow elections, which are held in May 2027. But the Section 24 direction constrains what the local authority, what Stratford could do without reference back to this other body. And as I say, it's voluntary between the October-November time 26 until the May 27 elections, but post-May 27, if it's repeated what's going to happen in Surrey, any spending decision from the council of more than £1 million worth of capital or £100,000 worth of revenue would have to effectively be signed off by the shadow authority before it could be implemented. And then, of course, it all goes live on April 2028. The point of the additional recommendation to Cabinet addresses that issue surrounding the implementation executive, and also surrounding the view that a new authority in itself would lead to the greater transformation is discussed in paragraph 1.10.4 of the report, and therefore the other 3 councils are all included in another recommendation specifically around, in the event of a single unitary Warwickshire, that should be treated as a new organisation and not as a continuing authority. Chair, I think we've given that a bit of a go. If there's any final questions, happy to take them. But otherwise, as discussed at the beginning, the debate for this will be in Chamber on the 17th.
Councillor Keithley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to try and understand how the government allocated additional grant funding to the local authorities depending on the need. And I take you back to table 6. Anybody listening in would be a bit alarmed to think that a little old lady living in Treddington in a bandy house on her own puts the bin out every 3 weeks is going to have to pay some more council tax to support a family of 6 in a Band D house living in Nuneaton. And that's where council tax based on properties appears to be very unfair, doesn't it, for people? Because a large number of people looking for more resources in a less affluent area being supported by somebody living on their own, perhaps in a more affluent area. How does the government, how do the grants that come into the local authorities work to support the local authorities to cover the gaps that come from the tax base? Do you see the point I'm making?
Absolutely.
And anyone listening in is going to say, well, I'm really quite unhappy that Warwickshire County Council suggests that the North's going to go bust in no time because everyone lives in Band B houses and people in the South are going to prop it all up in the North.
So, Warwickshire, in the absence of the exemplifications fund of Fair Funding 2.0, the County Council have done their best in trying to get to a position which could assume what the current split of resources would be. But part of the rationale, part of the purpose of Fair Funding Review 2.0 is to recognise the ability for localities to raise council tax and how that can support their budgets, and therefore that's one of the principles that government are trying to seek to achieve, a fairer allocation of central government funding to more deprived areas with lower tax bases that should hopefully resolve the issue that we've just been discussing.
Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, apologies for late arrival due to wonderful traffic problems. So I'm a bit more restrained than I'm normal today. Yes, there's a couple of things just going back on that last point. Yes, we don't know about what's happening in the fairer funding paper. We've got something in principle. You've got some draft details or draft with a silent R that we don't know much about. So therefore, it's right and proper. You have to make your assumptions on things that you know about or the last things that happen. So I think that is fair. And we also must remember that the things that are being leaked in the budget or potentially going to be leaking in the budget are the potential extra banding or potential extra charge for the higher rated properties. So we must consider that as well, particularly I assume as we have far more higher rated banded properties in Stratford district compared to other parts, the north of the county, I believe, but I'm not 100% on that. So I think we've got to be careful what we're saying about this. I think it's right. They've made the assumptions, financial assumptions on known variables, as opposed to unknown variables that can change, and as this government has been doing from week to week. More U-turns in a racetrack at the moment, so and it's a shame we couldn't do some U-turns on the motorway because it might have got here earlier, but unfortunately I wasn't allowed to. So that's all from Grumpy Crumpy, so thank you for that.
Would you like? Oh, Councillor Whaley-Hoggins.
Yeah, I think Councillor Keithley raises a very valid point about the South financially, but let us not forget that we have a socialist central government in charge at the moment, so and they'll be looking at that very carefully. So I'm just giving a word of warning here that is what we're dealing with, because they make the decision, don't they, ultimately. Thank you.
Done. So I wasn't proposing, Chair, to be fair. I've gone through the report. I don't know if Tony wants to make some points back before we conclude.
Yeah, I suppose my only points, but thank you, David, for your presentation. We need to sort of resolve as a committee whether there's any feedback that you want to sort of pass on for consideration by the Cabinet when they look at this in the normal style of the OSC, normally how it would produce your written report. I've been making a few notes, but I've been listening to the debate, which might sort of help us with that. And the point that seemed to cause the sort of biggest amount of debate and sort of need for feedback was around the strategic authority and the direction of that, and perhaps the need to stress greater stress to keep the option of a single Warwickshire strategic authority open within any of the options. Would that be a fair comment? But I'm in the chairman, the combination of chairman's hands about how you want to take this forward, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't conclude the meeting without giving you that opportunity if there was something you particularly wanted to say, or if you're broadly happy with the report, you could just say that you've considered the report like you do with the budget, and you consider it's a fair representation to take the debate forward. So just for those points.
Councillor Keithley.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Tony. That's useful to suggest that we need to move now to a point in this meeting where we discuss whether or not there's some recommendations that we wish to come forward to Cabinet. So, I mean, do you want me to start? Sure?
Yes, would you like to carry on?
You
Yes.
seem unsure. You
Carry
are
on,
sure?
Carry on.
Okay. Well, I think having looked at the report and listened to what David, thank you very much for the presentation, what have you. My view is that I think there's a huge amount of work gone into this, and I appreciate that from the officers and the consultants. There's clearly a lot of work gone in. It's high quality, I think. And I think that all the background data that supports the business case, the appendix business case going forward is very valuable. I think personally that Appendix 11, when I read it, if you all turn to Appendix 11, that's the text of the report that's going to go forward to government. I think that perhaps the report, particularly the first few pages, which are the executive summary, could be a little more impactful. Thinking about the quality of the People to report, we mentioned that you know, quite great weight could be placed on their findings because they've been employed by other councils as well. There's some of the issues that they've raised in respect of the financial aspects of it, but also they cover things like the improvement in the provision of SEND and education services. That's all coming through in the People to report. I think that the case in the executive summary needs to be more impactfully put, if that's the right description, at the start, because my fear is that when the government ministers receive our submission, that they'll have a quick look at the first couple of pages and probably make their mind up. So I think the first couple of pages are really important. And I think when I read Appendix 11, I'm not going to be critical, I'm just sort of passing my observations. But if you read Executive Summary 1.1, for example, it talks about proud and distinct communities, and it's not homogeneous, it's very different places, and it doesn't help me understand early on what is so different about things. The issues of the risk of disaggregation of county services, which is, I think, probably one of the strongest points of the County Council's proposal to stick with the unitary authority. The risks of disaggregating are in the People to report are highlighted as more less of a risk and more of an opportunity. I think that was the way it was described, David. I think you put that point across actually when you were talking. But that, to me, this isn't coming through strongly in the executive summary. And that was some of the feedback I would like to give to Cabinet, that whilst I appreciate that we've got very limited time and that we need to work with other boroughs and the districts to pull this together in very, very short order, I would like to see some strengthening of the key messages in the first couple of pages. So I think I've said enough. Thanks.
Councillor Johnson.
I just want to say I agree with Councillor Keithley. We need to get the messages over quickly and simply. I think it's there, it's just doesn't shout out clearly enough. And I don't know whether you can persuade your colleagues, David, to amend this document, but if you could give it a go, it would be good.
Check. Of course, Council hasn't decided on its approach yet, but there is 3 recommendations going forward to Council, one of which is post the Council meeting to give us some licence to take on board comments. Undoubtedly, this is same report is being considered by the 4 different councils, and therefore there'll be an opportunity to reflect before the final submission. And I will say, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, the graphic design work on the document is being undertaken at the moment, and we should have we will have a version that we can share with councillors before the council meeting on the 17th.
Councillor Crump.
Yeah, just one point back to Cabinet from my point of view is that getting the message out to the government about consultation when that takes place, to make sure they stress to the government that consultation is done properly, gets a pretty good response rate, and it's a response rate from all parts of the county as well. So let's make sure the consultation is done properly, and they put enough resources into doing that.
Can I just say, Councillor Crump, we won't be allowed to do the consultation when it comes to...
No, I'm saying the message is the Cabinet, asking the Cabinet to make sure that the residents of Warwickshire feel that the consultation needs to be done in a meaningful way. Not us to do it, but for the government to do it properly, rather than... just to highlight that much, because sometimes consultations can be done to different standards, shall we say.
I don't know how to react to that question, but yeah, the government have got they've got a process of consultation that I'm sure they're seeking to run here. Of course, we can highlight that consultation exercise to our residents to make them sure that they're aware that it's going on at that time.
Councillor Littlewood.
Thank you. Just a comment. What I like to see things put in context, and if we're looking at 1.3 on page 332. Page 4 of the submission draft. There's a very nice stark table there that shows this net savings of single and 2 unitary authorities being a difference of 2 million. And this means that on the scoring against the criteria that the single unitary authority appears to be financially better. At a glance, you would think, well, that's important. I would like to see context of what that really means in terms of the overall budget of the total budgets of all the councils, and it is vanishingly small, and therefore, or really, to give it any weight at all seems a little bit silly to me. But people need to see it in reality.
Chair, thank you. On page 357 of the report, of course, we'll put the gross expenditure in for each of the district and boroughs and the county council. The gross expenditure is just short of £1.5 billion across the piece. So I think that's the point you're making.
But as, if I may, as Councillor Keithley said, that its impact in the first few pages, and I think we're good there.
Councillor Crump.
Just still got my consultation hat on. I know David, Mr. Buckland mentioned it was close 51-49% in Surrey. The consultation, it was close 51-49%. Sorry, I just wondered what the response rate was. Again, if we've only got a response rate of so many percentage of the population, you would want as many of our residents to respond to it as possible. Again, it's just for information, really. I probably should have asked the question offline. But
I don't know, but I can certainly circulate with the notes from the meeting what the rate of response was within Surrey. I can let you have that.
Right. From the chair, though, I'd like to ask, because it seems one of the big issues is the disaggregation of health and social care. I wondered if the people here that have experience on the county health and care ordinance overview and scrutiny committee, I wonder if they've got any comments about how difficult it will be to disaggregate and what the issues are.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure we should be going down that route today, Chair. I think that will absolutely be a valid question when it comes to the actual decision from government. And I will say, what the report doesn't pull out on that timetable is post the government decision, that would be made, say, in the autumn of next year, well, even in the July, work streams will be set up across finance, IT, contracts, HR, to make for them smooth as possible transitions to the new working arrangements. And when government makes its decision, there's the assumption that all of the local authorities will fall in behind that decision immediately to make the best of that.
All right. That's the sort of information I was looking for. Thanks. Councillor Whaley-Hoggins?
Yeah, again, I'm not sure if this is a question for now or for a question for debate, so I'm happy to for you to tell me. Is that okay? But how are things like the SEND budget going to be split between two authorities? Because there's the statutory override, that sort of thing. I mean, it's all of that complication that is actually putting your head in a spin when you try to work it out how it's going to be. And again, it boils down to the fact that these are some of our most vulnerable residents that we need to absolutely be able to hit the ground running with this. And we know there's massive shortfalls with this. But if that's not for now, can you make a note of it, please? And can I have some sort of information regarding that? Thank you.
Chair, if I can, that is a significant issue and has proven to be a significant issue in places like Cumbria and Northamptonshire where existing counties are split, but it can be done. So it has been done in other places and it could be done here.
I would like to know how it's done. It's all very well saying it can be done, but I want to know how this is going to be achieved, because we actually are the ones that are going to have to reassure our residents. You know, so if you've got, isn't it 98 million at the moment, it's projected to be 160 million in 2 years' time. These are really big sums of money. And I think if we bring that back to the North Warwickshire example regarding their funding, I think this is significant. So therefore, I do think that getting a little bit more information about how we're going to do that is going to be useful for our residents, because we're the messengers almost in all of this, and we do need to know the answers of how we're going to do it. But thank you.
Councillor Rolfe.
I sit on Adult Health Overview and Scrutiny at County. I think it's an impossible question to answer, and until we do know where we are, whether it's single or two unitary, and that's when we start working out how it works, because I think it's impossible to do now, in my opinion.
Councillor Johnson, then Councillor Whaley-Hoggins.
My comment would be that looking at 2029 and 30, the government is going to have a massive impact on what local government will be doing by then. We've got the KCU review on adult social care, and something will have to have been done about SEND in 5 years' time. So the context then, I think, will be very different to that now. And basically, that's for government to decide rather than us.
Yeah, I think to help the committee just sort of on this point, what you're considering in this report and the decision that sort of is in your hand to make a recommendation of is about the structure and representation. The issue of SEND and the budgets and the demands and whether there's enough resource to go round runs on regardless, and it's I think the committee have acknowledged that it's an increasing burden and the resource is scarce. What I suppose you're being asked to steer on here is, how do you think it would be best to use that scarce resource? Because I suspect it probably will still be scarce. Do you think that would be better in a two-unitary solution where you could reflect the challenges separately of north or south? Or do you favour the option where you think a single entity has more efficiency in distributing that? So I think it would be probably helpful to concentrate the debate around that rather than the actual issue of SEND. It's the representative structure is what we're looking at.
Councillor Whaley-Hoggins.
I mean, I raise this because these are the things that are the nitty-gritty of this, because you could read this report, and I acknowledge the fact, I think that's the phrase I'm going to use today, I acknowledge the fact that this is quite a positive document for the two unitaries, but I do think there has to be some balance in this so that those reading the report can see that we've assessed all options, all right? And I think the point that we've just raised regarding the funding for key services is an important one. And I think in order for us to look like the grown-ups in the room, you need to actually needs to be slightly more balanced and considered, not just looking for the answers that give us the go ahead for the north-south option.
And look, there'd be a long period of negotiation between, if there was a split, between where the assets and indeed the liabilities between the two newly established organisations would take. I will draw members' attention to pages 266 of the report and 267, which specifically looks at how send as an issue could be addressed under a two-unitary scenario. I don't really want to get bogged down in it now, but I think that we're talking slightly across purposes, that there is a lot of work and a lot of negotiation with government as well in order to establish these new councils. What the report does is it provides a forecast of what it could look like. The how, we will certainly come back with, and I think even within the report itself, we talk about post the decision and early in 2026, further reports coming through the Cabinet and OSC about, well, how do we make this real now?
Do you want to come in, Mr. Perks? Yeah.
No, I haven't anything particularly to say, Chair. I think Howard and I will put together a summary of those points. It's been a really useful debate. We'll circulate that to members and we'll make sure that that's presented to the Cabinet through your chairman on Monday.
Right. Are there any other points or questions that people want to make? Right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Wakeland. Oh, right. Oh, hang on.
This is not urgent business. Yes, there is no.
Oh, no other urgent business. Is there any other urgent business?
No,
sorry.
There isn't.
No, there isn't. Right. So in that case, I'll bang my mallet. Right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.